Hey guys, it's been a while since we've been on Play Pause It, but we're going to pick back up right now talking about linear functions. So let's review really quickly a couple of things that we know about linear functions. We know that we can find the rate of change of a linear function by using that formula delta y over delta x, which stands for the change in y divided by the change in x. We know that there is a form of linear equations called slope-intercept form, and we know that slope-intercept form looks like y equals mx plus b. And that's a very helpful form of equations because it tells me both the slope and the y-intercept. The y-intercept tells me about approximately where this thing is starting on the y-axis, and the m, my rate of change, tells me how it's changing from that place. We also then spent some time talking about a different form of linear functions, and that was point slope form. And point slope form looks like y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And so far, those are the three types of, the three things we've talked about in terms of linear functions. We've talked about a constant rate of change, we've talked about slope-intercept form, we've talked about point slope form. Well, today, we're going to talk a little bit about the third and final form that we need to know about, and that is called standard form. And the standard form of a linear function looks like this: ax plus by equals c. Essentially, in order for something to be written in standard form, the term that has x and the term that has y need to be on the exact same side of your equation. And on the other side of the equation is just going to be some kind of constant term. Okay, so let's give you an example here. Standard form would look something like this: 3x plus 2y equals 6. That is standard form of an equation. We've seen standard form before because there was a lot of questions that I gave you that looked like standard form that you were asked to turn into slope-intercept form. And we did that by solving for y. So if I asked you to turn this into slope-intercept form, we would do a minus 3x on both sides, and we would get 2y equals minus 3x plus 6, divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, and we get y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 3. But we also want to be able to go back the other direction. We want to be able to take something in slope-intercept and go back to standard form. So let's take a look at what that will look like. Let's start with something in slope-intercept form, something like y equals half x plus 2. And to get the x and the y on the same side now, I've got to move that half x back over by doing a minus half x on both sides. And I'm going to rewrite minus half x plus y equals 2, because those have canceled. And we have two special rules about standard form. Rule 1. X and y cannot have negative coefficients. Okay, it can't have negative coefficients. I take that back. That's not entirely true. Let's go back for a second. We don't want to say that quite. We want to say that x and y cannot have fraction coefficients. My apologies. Coefficients. Okay. And rule 2, x cannot have a negative coefficient. Okay? So as I'm looking at this, I'm breaking rule 1 and I'm breaking rule 2 right now because x has a fraction coefficient. So, and just to recap, a coefficient is that number right there that's hanging out in front of the variable, right? So what can I do to get rid of that fraction coefficient? Well, the easiest way to get rid of a half is to multiply the entire equation by 2. And 2 times negative half is going to be negative 1x. And 2 times y is going to be 2y. And 2 times 2 is going to be 4. Well, I solved my problem with number 1. Now, number 1, I don't have a fraction coefficient. But I'm still not solving the problem of number 2. Number 2 says x cannot have a negative coefficient. And right now it does. That coefficient in front of x is negative 1. Well, how can I solve that problem? Well, I'm going to multiply the entire thing now by negative 1. And I'm going to get positive x, negative 2y, and negative 4. And as long as I'm doing this multiplication to the entire line, as long as I'm multiplying to both sides of my equation, I'm going to remain with something that's a true statement. And that solves my second problem of x cannot have a negative coefficient. Now, x is positive, and x and y are not fractions. Okay. Let's do another example. What if I had something like this? Y equals 3x minus 2. Okay? What would be the first thing we need to do to turn this into standard form? Right, so the first thing we're going to do here is we need to move that 3x back over because standard form has x and y on the same side. I'm going to rewrite this, negative 3x plus y. Notice that my 3x is negative, so I wrote it as negative. And my y was positive, so I wrote it as positive. Be careful with that. So I'm going to have 3x plus y equals negative 2. And then there were 2 rules I asked you to remember. Rule 1, x and y cannot be fractions. Well, they're not fractions, so far we're doing good. Rule 2, x cannot have a negative coefficient, and in this case, it does have a negative coefficient, so I'm going to multiply the entire equation by negative 1, and that's going to give me 3x minus y equals positive 2, and that's what standard form is going to look like for that equation. All right, let's take a look at another one. Let's do one more that has a fraction in it. Let's do something like y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 4. First thing I'm going to do is move the x back over. I need the x and the y on the same side. And that's going to give me 3 over 2x plus y equals 4. I've got to get rid of the fraction that's on the x. And in order to get rid of that fraction, I'm going to multiply by 2. And when I distribute that 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 2 times y is 2y, and 2 times 4 is 8, and that's what the standard form of that equation would look like. Cool. So I'm going to give you a couple questions to try right now and see what you come up with. Let's start with this guy. Y equals negative 2x plus 5. Let's write that in standard form. Cool, so to write this in standard form, we need x and y on the same side. I'm going to add 2x to both sides. And I'm going to get 2x plus y equals 5. Rule 1 says that x and y cannot be fractions. Are they fractions? No, they're not, so we're good. Rule 2 says that x cannot be a negative coefficient. Is x a negative coefficient? No, it's not, so we're good. That's it. That's your answer. There was no other step because when I did my initial step, I didn't violate any rules. Let's try another one. Y equals, let's go with negative 4x plus 3. Standard form, go for it. Just like the last one, to get rid of a negative 4x, I've got to do a plus 4x. And that's going to give me 4x plus y equals 3. And that's it. That's the answer. Because the x is not negative, it's positive, and neither the x or the y is a fraction. Well, what about this? Y equals 5x minus 2. How do I write that in standard form? So I'm going to minus that 5x. I'm going to get minus 5x plus y equals minus 2. I'm breaking one of my rules. I don't want that x coefficient to be negative, so I'm just going to take this whole thing and multiply by negative 1, and I'm going to get 5x minus y equals positive 2. Let's challenge you for a minute. See what you come up with here. I'm going to give you 2 points. Let's go with 2, 3, and 6, comma 5. So I'm giving you these 2 points. I'm giving you these 2 points, and I want you to write these in standard form. All right, so let's see what we're going to do. I'm going to go like that, I'm going to go like that. And my rate of change here is going to be plus 2 on the y and plus 4 on the x. So m is 2 over 4, which is half. Now that I got you started, let's see what you can come up with. Write an equation in standard form. Cool, so I never taught you how to write this equation in standard form, did I? But I did teach you how to write this in a different form. So let's start with something we do know how to do. Let's start with point slope. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And that's going to give us y minus, let's pick a point. I like this point. Let's use that one. Y minus 3 equals half times x minus 2. And that's going to give us y minus 3 equals half x minus 1. And then add 3 to both sides. And I'm going to get y equals half x plus 2. And that's nice. That's an equation. I was looking for an equation, but that's an equation in slope-intercept form. So how do we take this thing, y equals half x plus 2, and turn it back into standard form now? Well, I'm going to take this half x back over to the other side with the y. I'm going to get negative half x plus y equals 2. And then I'm breaking 2 different rules here. I'm breaking my negative rule and I'm breaking my fraction rule. What can I multiply by that will fix the fraction and the negative at the same time? Yeah, I'm going to multiply by negative 2. And that's going to give me positive 1x minus 2y equals negative 4. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this video here. I think that we have gone over plenty of examples that you should now have in your notebook that you should be comfortable working with. And we'll continue to do this tomorrow in class. Good luck, guys.